As an innocent 6-year-old, I sat in the exam room with my grandparents when the doctor delivered the life-altering news. My grandmother had leukemia. Being 6, I didn't understand the reality of what was to come. For 3 years, I watched this disease slowly take my grandmother's life away. Health is important. We all value having a healthy family, and no one can fathom losing a family member to a disease. With leukemia running in my family history, I am at risk to one day have it myself. Today we will look at leukemia by examining the disease's history, the current prognosis, as well as the disease's future. First, let's examine the history of leukemia. According to the New York Times, last accessed on May 18, 2020, leukemia was discovered in 1847 by Dr. Rudolf Virchow. According to the Medical News Today website, last visited on May 18, 2020, leukemia affects the white blood cells, which are the infection-fighting cells, and causes abnormal white blood cells to be produced, hindering the body's ability to fight infection. The New York Times website goes on to say that the first attempt to treat leukemia was in 1913 with a blood transfusion from the patient's twin brother. The Medical News Today website also states that leukemia develops by DNA mutations caused by genetic and environmental factors. Now that we have explored the disease's history, let's examine the current prognosis. The Medical News Today website goes on to say that in 2019, 62,000 individuals were diagnosed, 23,000 individuals passed away, and 382,000 individuals lived with leukemia or were in remission. Leukemia is most likely to affect individuals over the age of 55 and is also the most common cancer amongst children 15 and younger. There are different types of leukemias, and as you can see, chronic lymphocytic leukemia is the most common. Leukemia is diagnosed by blood tests and bone marrow tests and is treated by chemotherapy, biological therapy, targeted therapy, radiation therapy, as well as stem cell transplant. Avoiding tobacco and exposure to pesticides and industrial chemicals lowers the risk of developing leukemia. Now that we have explored the current prognosis, let's examine the future of this disease. According to the American Cancer Society website, last accessed on May 18, 2020, there in the recent years a highly sensitive test called the polymerase chain reaction test detects small amounts of leukemia left over after treatment that the routine bone marrow test cannot detect. Researchers studying many new chemotherapy drugs as well. In 2017, the first gene therapy was approved and to treat children and young adults. Scientists continue to research and improve gene therapy. Today, we have looked at leukemia. First, we examined the history, then the current prognosis, and finally looked at the future. In memory of my grandmother, I encourage you to avoid tobacco and minimize exposure to pesticides and industrial chemicals. If you or a loved one has battled leukemia, you now know more about it. Fellow TJC students, we are excited to share our campus today with one of the greatest entrepreneurs known today. He is known as the richest man in the world with a net worth of $145.4 billion. To break that down, imagine making $2,489 per second. You may think this is unattainable for you, but Jeff Bezos is here to encourage and motivate you to be your best you. Jeff wasn't gifted with money at birth. Rather, the choices he has made over the course of his life are the reason he has attained such success. Jeff grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, living with his mother and stepfather. His family was part of the low class with minimal money. Jeff was an innovator from a young age and always had a knack for figuring out how things worked. As a child, he spent countless hours creating things he couldn't afford, building models in an assortment of electronic kits, and often coming up with his own inventions. Jeff attended Princeton University and gained a double major in electronics and computer science. At the age of 30, he came across the startling statistic that the web usage was growing at a rate of 2,300% per year. With this, he decided to quit his job and start his own internet company known as Amazon. What Jeff didn't know is that his company would become the largest and most valuable company in the world, turning him into the first trillionaire. As Jeff will explain, success is not defined only by the gifts you are given at birth, but also by the choices we make over the course of our life. Please join me as we welcome to TJC, Mr. Jeff Bezos.